Hello friends, today we are reviewing Dragon Age, the Veilguard. I'll be honest, when this game was first released I had mixed feelings, curiosity, and a bit of anxiety. Like many of you, I had already experienced conflicting emotions from BioWare's recent releases. After spending several dozen hours of gameplay in the Veilguard, I'm now ready to share my thoughts. There will be praise, but unfortunately even more criticism. Let's start with the combat system, which I think works decently but isn't without issues. I started the game as a mage, and at first the combat seemed promising. In the Veilguard, every class can use two types of weapons. For the mage, it's a staff and a magical dagger, which promised interesting combos. However, after a few hours, I realized most fights boiled down to repeatedly spamming the same attack. Even on medium difficulty, this allowed me to avoid using mechanics like parrying or finishing moves. The tactical feeling quickly faded, and combat began to feel like a linear action sequence rather than a well-thought-out battle. That said, there were moments that impressed me, such as the ability to combine abilities, elemental magic with close combat strikes. In one scene, when fighting a horde of demons summoned from the rift, I linked a fire explosion with lightning, triggering a chain reaction that wiped out enemies in an instant. These moments make you feel like a true tactician. But in some missions, like when I defended a village from undead, the fights became too predictable. The enemies lack variety and often repeat, turning battles into simple waves of identical foes. The problem is that on medium difficulty, sometimes they're too easy, and sometimes they just overwhelm you with numbers, creating an illusion of difficulty but no real strategy or interesting mechanics. This makes such scenes feel dull and repetitive. Now, let's talk about the story. The Veilguard tries to immerse us in a dark world full of secrets and magic. The main quest, where we investigate the origin of a mysterious evil, has its exciting moments, but at times, the plot feels too predictable. One of the most interesting parts for me was when our main character discovers the journal of a long-dead mage. The notes, full of hints about ancient rituals, gradually reveal that this mage was on the brink of a great discovery. Finding such pieces of information is genuinely engaging, making you feel like an explorer. However, overall, I was a bit disappointed by the quests. They were far simpler than I had expected. Many quests boil down to repetitive tasks like collect items, defend a point, or defeat monsters. While in Inquisition or Origins, quests often required tough moral choices or had unexpected twists. Here, everything feels too linear. For example, one task simply has you move an object and another asks you to explore a location. It becomes so predictable that you lose interest. Honestly, I expected more, especially considering the depth and engagement of quests in previous games. The characters in Veilguard leave a mixed impression. Compared to the depth of Alistair and Morrigan from previous installments, the heroes here feel more like archetypes and fail to connect. Morrigan in particular disappointed me. She used to be cynical and independent, but now her face has become too standard, with a friendly smile that lacks the charm and magnetism she had in Origins. Her headgear resembles Flemeth's crown, which looks odd. Now she feels more like part of the scenery, a mere tool to complete missions rather than an independent character. Visually, the game is a treat for the eyes, at least at first glance. Locations are beautifully designed and every new area beckons exploration. For example, one of the locations is an ancient forest with ruins, surrounded by a mystical mist. I spent nearly half an hour just exploring the details, trying to piece together the history of the place. This attention to visual style was a pleasant surprise. However, the graphics also have their drawbacks. For instance, when we reach a village on the outskirts, which should look abandoned and fear-stricken, it appears too clean and sterile. It would have been more fitting to see signs of destruction, broken buildings. But instead, the village looks as if it was recently built. This slightly ruins the atmosphere. In Dragon Age, Veilguard, character customization offers the basic options you'd expect, such as choosing your race, human, elf, dwarf, kunari, and class, warrior, mage, rogue. However, compared to Inquisition, the visual customization feels more limited. The ability to tweak facial features and body shape is still there, but it's not as detailed as it was in Inquisition. The depth of personalization, especially regarding the backstory, seems less significant. The character feels more like a part of the world than an active driver of the story. But there is a nice new addition: transmogrification. This system allows you to change the appearance of your gear without affecting its stats, something that was missing in Inquisition. Overall, the customization in Veilguard is good, but it doesn't provide the same level of control over the character's appearance and its impact on the story as previous games did. The soundtrack deserves special mention. The music perfectly enhances the atmosphere of the game, especially during moments when the hero wanders through a dark forest or faces a powerful enemy. The composer did a great job capturing the spirit of the series and creating something memorable. There was a moment when, in an abandoned temple filled with ancient runes, a meditative, almost hypnotic melody played. It truly immerses you in the environment and intensifies the feeling of antiquity. Character voice acting is also on point, though there are some drawbacks. For example, secondary characters' voices sometimes don't match the situation, which can pull you out of the experience. Another thing that disappointed me was the dialogue, which often feels shallow and cliche. For example, when a character says, "You don't mind if I do this?" and the response is, "Of course, go ahead." It feels like a hollow phrase with no emotion. Likewise, the conversation between Varric and Solace after a 10-year absence feels weak. Don't destroy the world. I'm not destroying it. This gives the impression that character interactions don't influence the story or reveal their motives. Don't expect deep character development, especially with companions. They often feel too perfect and unwilling to confront conflict. You can either support their decisions or offer alternatives, but the dialogues seem like endless reassurance. It's going to be okay. No one is judging you. It feels more like group therapy than real interaction, which detracts from immersion. In this game, you can't play as a renegade or ask tough questions. There's no sense that you can truly influence the outcome of events. The Veilguard is an intriguing but controversial project. The game offers a great atmosphere, dynamic combat, and excellent music, but it doesn't meet the expectations of fans of the previous entries. The locations feel linear, choices are limited, and the dialogues lack the previous depth. Combat is fun at the beginning, but becomes monotonous over time and requires little effort. On medium difficulty, the game is relatively easy, with challenges only arising closer to the end. I get the feeling that the game's issues stem from BioWare's desire to create something that appeals to a broad audience. Otherwise, I don't know how to explain why every aspect of the game is so simplified. Overall, the Veilguard reminds me of classic RPGs like Fable or Overlord, with a linear approach and limited freedom of choice. I think if this weren't the highly anticipated sequel to a beloved series, but just a new game, there would be far less criticism. I'd recommend the game to those looking for an atmospheric RPG, but who don't expect much freedom or significant choices. Finally, I must mention the ongoing debate surrounding the Veilguard. Many players believe that EA and BioWare could have been more honest with the announcement. Right after the release, many positive reviews from bloggers who had early access appeared, but many fans rightly pointed out that the game doesn't live up to all the enthusiastic praise. So personally, I suggest approaching early reviews with some skepticism. Thanks for joining me for this review. I've just shared my opinion, so don't judge me too harshly. What do you think of the Veilguard? Do you think they've brought back that classic Dragon Age spirit? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. See you in Thedas.